Oh, I have two important questions for you that I think are fun to talk about, Judd. But off the air, you said in my scenario that I laid out to Sage Rosenfels, if Kirk Cousins came up to your office today and you were Rick Spielman and he said, I will sign a team friendly contract extension today, this moment,
Mhm.
or it's off the table until the offseason in which you'll have to make a decision on me then, and then I could potentially hit free agency. If that scenario was presented to Sage, he said, I'm just going to wait and see. And if you win the playoff game, then I'll bite the bullet. And or if you take us deep, I'll bite the bullet and I'll give you the contract extension. If not, I want to see how this plays out. You would sign Kirk Cousins today.
Yes. If he came up to my office right now and said, Judd, I said, yes, Kirk, what's going on? And he said, Judd, I want to win. How do we win? And I said, well, we win by you still being really, really rich at life. Like you're doing great, house intact, wife happy. But that being said, we win by you doing me a solid and taking a bit less. So you are now not trying to break the bank. You're going to make a lot, but now all of a sudden we can fill in with another defensive player. Or for Kirk, offensive line help. So yes, if Kirk Cousins came to me today and said, right now, this second, I'll sign a team-friendly contract, but if I walk out, we are going back to I want to break the bank come July. I'm doing that.
All right. Now, let me ask you a follow up. When Jared Goff went to the Super Bowl last year, the week of the Super Bowl leading up to it, and I had asked you, would you sign Jared Goff to a contract extension this moment? You would have said yes, right?
Team friend. I mean, is that team friendly? What
I
he
think
got?
I think his is team friendly. Yes.
Okay, then yes. Yep, for sure.
And now he has an 84 quarterback rating, and he's not on a very good team. And you wonder how they're ever going to get back to being where they were with a pretty, even though it's team friendly, pretty big quarterback contract. That is the question that is so interesting to me about Kirk Cousins' year, because over the last two seasons, only three guys have higher quarterback ratings, and we would all agree they are great. Drew Brees, Patrick Mahomes, and Russell Wilson are the only ones with higher quarterback ratings. Lamar Jackson right behind Kirk Cousins. And of course, the running element of Lamar Jackson changes that game. And so does Wilson's. But aside from that, that's not to say he's been the fourth best quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
But even by Pro Football Focus metrics, pretty high. And even by the QBR, which is a little more skeptical of Cousins' season this year, still in that top 10 ballpark for Cousins. But I think the way he's viewed for Minnesota Vikings fans who have come around on him this year much more than where they were last year, and winning does that for you. Also, maybe a little bit of a tweak in how he handled some certain things last year when things went wrong compared to this season where I think he has handled things much better. And national media has blown up on him over the apology and stuff like that. But I think in terms of how fans view Kirk Cousins, he's become a more likable figure for them this year. And to see someone's skill set fully maximized with great weapons and a great offensive mind and all those things, that you see what he is completely capable of in a regular season with a schedule that has been easy. There's no debating it. All 10 of your wins have come against teams with losing records. So under great circumstances, with great receiving options, an offensive line that's improved, one of the top three running backs in the game, and with Gary Kubiak and Kevin Stefanski seeming to work perfectly in lockstep, everything has been right for you. And you've been great. I don't think that's anything short of great this year for Kirk Cousins. He's fifth by Pro Football Focus. I'll see what he's ranked after today. They haven't put out their grades yet, but it's still going to be in that 5 or 6 area. The question is twofold on an extension. Number one, do you think this continues? And number two, does he have to win a playoff game to get to the next level? Like he said before the season, this is not the first time Kirk Cousins has put up very good quarterback ratings. It is the first time he's got 10 wins, but he had 9 wins once before. It's not like sometimes people act like he's just never done anything. Like, okay, no, he's won in the regular season before, and he's had 9 wins before. But the playoffs are the reason you're here. So if the reason you're here was not to put up a good quarterback rating necessarily, and not to win games against the Chargers who turn it over 7 times, or to beat the Detroit Lions that don't want to play for their coach, or, and on and on and on, all the other teams that they've beaten this year that weren't really worth it. It's to take this team deep into the postseason because that's what they're capable of per their just sheer level of talent. Add up all their talent,
The
put it up
personnel's
against
good.
these other teams, put it up against New Orleans, put it up against San Francisco, put it up against Green Bay or Seattle. They are there or better than all these teams that are going to be in the playoffs in pure talent. So if you can't take them anywhere, I think it would be fair for people to say, well, that's kind of what we brought you here for.
But you said the key words, though. The key words to this entire conversation are two team friendly. Team friendly. You give me team friendly, I'll give you a contract because I want the freedom. And this is my key thing with Kirk now. You got rich last time, okay? Did that really serve us all except for you really, really well? Absolutely not. Because now contracts are a problem, salary cap's a problem. So if you are willing to cut me a deal, I will make your life very good. And here's the other key thing that I do. I go to Kirk and I say, Kirk comes to me and I say, Kirk, let's do the deal. And I draw the contract up. The second he leaves my office, guess what else I do? I summon one Gary Kubiak to my office. There is no salary cap on coaching staff. And I push a piece of paper across the table at Gary and I say, Gary, don't ever tell people this, but what you are looking at is Mike Zimmer's contract. You're looking at exactly what Mike makes. I'm going to give you $1 less. And I'm going to make you incredibly rich. And if Stefanski bolts on me, oh no, I've lost him. That's too bad. He's a good coach. But my gosh, if we have buried the lead right now on a 10-win team in 2019, it's Gary. Gary Kubiak has been, and I will give the Vikings a demerit for the fact that they didn't think of this last year because Kirk needs this, and that's clear, right? But the partnership between what Kirk can do to execute, and it's Kevin calling plays, but make no mistake, it's Kubiak's offensive scheme that has been put in here. It's a marriage that is a very successful one. And so if Kirk will give me a deal on his contract for salary cap purposes, I'm then calling Gary in and I'm saying, Gary, everything remains exactly status quo, except you're going to make $1 less than Zim, and that's going to be it.
I think even we underestimated, because of natural skepticism about how he would fit in and so forth, underestimated the Gary effect.
Mm-hmm.
When you go through his career and just look at the quarterbacks who have become something under Gary Kubiak, it's remarkable. And we have really gotten an up close and personal look at all those reasons why. Their scripted plays from yesterday were just brilliant. They go right down the field and score a touchdown.
The same exact thing.
Wow. I mean, How about that? And even in-game adjustments are really good. And the bootlegs have helped the offensive line. Sage Rosenfels predicted all of this like a gypsy before the season, but how did he know? Because he played with Gary, and he went, I think, 4-1 with Gary or something like that when he started in Houston. And it works. The things that they do, they're extremely unpredictable. They have at one point CJ Ham lines up as a wide receiver, and then he's a tight end, and then he's a fullback, and opposing teams don't know what to do with that. It's just remarkable. Then they come out and they run a couple of end arounds just to show you that we might do it, and then later they come back to the jet motion, and then it's a fake, but you have to then pay attention to it, and that opens up something else. The screen game. Kirk Cousins has picked up a bleep ton of yards by now usually he throws it over the guy, unlike yesterday, but by usually just being able to drop it off to Delvin Cook or Alexander Madison and letting them run. And part of the question then becomes about this Kirk extension and whether he's shown you enough that you would do it today is, well, let's see, if you offered Gary all that money and you somehow kept Kevin Stefanski, or at least just Gary, let's say he doesn't want to move again or whatever, he wants to stay here, then would you be confident in saying, you know what, we could be one of those teams that has the rookie quarterback that we draft this year develop for next year, or we could sign somebody else for cheaper and bring them in and have them replace Kirk but put up similar numbers? Or we want a guy who maybe can run or has better pocket presence or does something differently than Cousins. I think you are kind of putting your life in your hands, going from a quarterback who has been this year just outside or just into the top 5 by Pro Football Focus, top 10 by QBR, the ESPN stat, and by quarterback rating all the way at the top. So everything says he's been good. You're risking it. But then I look at some of the other teams that have done this same thing. Aaron Rodgers with the Packers, where, you're risking it by not keeping Favre until he absolutely dies. Or the best example is Kansas City, but even New England has done the same sort of thing with succession plans for Brady. It's just that Brady hadn't fallen off until right now. And I find this question never endingly fascinating where we all stand on a potential extension, because I think the audience would probably be split between saying, yeah, good luck finding a better quarterback than this.
Give me the parameters. What, 3 more years?
Let's say 3 more years, and let's just say the same contract. Same contract goes
Which now
to
is
team friendly from 3 years from now.
very true. Yeah, I'd be very tempted. Unless I felt that Gary could go out and find me a QB, identify one that I could draft. Kirk is, look, this offense now, it's good. It's successful.
It is good.
It's run really well. Kirk is not a disaster now by any means. He's good. So if I'm going now, if you tell me I'm going 5 more years, I'm going to be, that's a little bit long for me. But if I'm going 3 more years and Gary, and I'm not being a smart aleck here, if Gary says I will stay, I need you, Gary. You know this. No, I'm serious. This doesn't work if I bring in the fly-by-night guy. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. Yep.
So if Gary says, you know what, this has been great, the media, I don't have to talk to those bozos ever for the most part. Seriously, Gary is not being praised, Matthew, because people are forgetting Gary's here.
Yeah.
And Gary clearly likes that. That's fine. But if you're telling me 3 more years of Kirk, 3 more years, I'll do it.
Isn't that part of the question though with Kirk is, and this sort of speaks to how important it is for him to win in the playoffs this year, for them to go deep this year, because everything has aligned for them, aside from a bit of a bum shoulder for Dalvin Cook. And we'll see where that goes over the rest of the year. But aside from that, I mean, you're almost nitpicking to say, well, one receiver missed some games. Your offensive line has been fully healthy this year. Stephon Diggs has caught everything deep. A few balls underneath have been dropped, but I mean, you're nitpicking at that point. He's been unreal this year. And they have players developing out of freaking nowhere all over the place. BC Johnson catches a 19-yard ball. Irv Smith with a great touchdown catch. These guys are coming out of the woodwork.
Rick gets credit there, man.
I mean, you have Mike Boone shows up and can run the ball.
Well, how about the 2015 draft?
And those guys have turned into your
stars.
superstars.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to keep a great defense together. We've seen that. And this might be the last year of them having this much success even. I know people are skeptical, but they're still 6th in points. And it's going to be hard as they go forward to continue that. But that's where I might say there is a case to turn down his extension, see if you can win the playoffs, because you've had everything right for him. And it's not always going to be that way. And if everything needs to be right in order for you to do what they've done this year, including schedule, then you would say, all right, well, let me see it against Drew Brees. Go down to New Orleans and really show me. But then again, it's really hard to judge a guy on one game.
This is a tough conversation.
Yeah, it's very,
I'm just telling
very
you, when I look around this league at quarterback play, okay, and I look, and if you were to ask me, how many quarterbacks would you instantly extend by 3 to 5 years right now? That list is incredibly small. Incredibly small. Wilson for sure. Watson for sure. There's 3 or 4. But Breeze is too old now. Brady's too old now. So if you're asking me with what Kirk has done, if this is going to put me in a situation to potentially re-sign guys or sign guys in free agency, I got to consider it.
Yeah,
I've got to consider
it. It would be very hard to turn it down when you've had this type of production and
it's
shown that you can do it.
And it's your fault that you got the harebrained idea last year to bring in the quarterbacks coach from Philadelphia and be like, oh, this is going to work with our quarterback just fine. That's a Viking fault.
And I think what the counterpoint to that would be is there were also times where they've needed him to be big, even within this season.
Yep.
And he hasn't been. And that's why they're 0-4 against teams with winning records.
This is true.
And they are going to get a chance to turn that around against Green Bay in a game that has minimal meaning.